All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to Everything College Bowl podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be looking at the Pop-Tarts Bowl going down in Orlando at Camping World Stadium. Wildcats 3-point favorites, 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, December 28th, live on ESPN. Looking at the offenses for NC State, obviously bringing over Brendan Armstrong and reuniting him with Robert and I. Didn't exactly go as planned. This is a guy that was benched midway through the season. He missed, 4 or 5 straight games. He ended up getting back on the field. He ended up finishing the year with 11 touchdowns, 6 picks, last 2 games of the year. He was great. This team ended up going on a 5-game winning streak. They won 6 out of the last 7 to get here. But I think Armstrong's really certainly refound some of the form he's capable of over this last couple games. 62% comp rate for him this year. About 150 yards passing per contest, 6 touchdowns, 544 rushing. This is a player that he's just not going to regain his form that he saw at Virginia a couple years ago, Nick, where he was just absolutely loading up the stat sheet. But this is still a veteran quarterback playing in this game, who after the last 2 games has certainly showcased his abilities to be a game changer.
Certainly a good leader for this team. Like you said, it's going to be really impossible for him to bring back that same sort of speed and momentum he had at Virginia, but he's looked really good. This offense looked good in the last couple of games. They scored 39 against UNC and 35 against Virginia Tech. That Tech defense is not a bad defense at all. This team turned a corner in the second half of the season, like you said, winning their last 5 to get to this bowl game here and earn the right to play a good Kansas State team. 26.8 points per game, 4.04 yards per attempt on the ground, and 5.23 yards per play. Armstrong, like you said, not the best season, but not a terrible season by any stretch of the imagination, right? 1,600 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 6 picks, 544 on the ground, and the 6 scores. So he had some good balance, kind of a true dual threat opportunity for this offense. I like Armstrong a lot. I think he's a good veteran leader for this team.
Now, you look at the rushing attack, it's certainly better than it was in years past, but that's not really anything to glamor over. Only 150 yards per contest this year. Armstrong being that leading rusher. KC Conception, one of their top pass catchers. He's their second leading rusher with 297 on 38 attempts. Kendrick Ralph, Delbert Mims, Michael Allen. There's plenty of different guys on here. They all have 250-plus yards rushing. Mims, with his 8 scores, has really gotten a lot of goal line work. As the lead back, Jordan Houston, of course, he hasn't played all year, and he's in the portal. So lots of stuff going on with the running game. Speaking of Conception, 767, 10 touchdowns, 64 receptions, that is. This is a guy that led the team at all those marks. He is a freshman All-American. Keon Lassane hasn't really been as good as we thought. 0 touchdowns, 28 grabs, 247. Bradley Rosner, a guy we thought would be good for them as well. Terrell Timmons is in the portal. Trent Penix, I believe, is playing in this game. This is a passing game that really had the potential to be something good this year, Nick, especially with guys like Dakari Collins and Porter Rooks. But they never found that form. Conception, though, he's really been a saving grace for them, and he does have a couple of seniors paired up with him that can certainly make plays downfield at some given moments.
Without Conception, this offense would certainly be in a tough spot. Do it all, jack of all trades guy. I'm really glad what we've seen out of him so far this season. He really turned the corner and was able to produce for this offense, what I think is really important to note for this team. Concepcion, like you said, 767, 12 yards per catch, 10 scores, plus the 297 and 7.8 on the ground. Delbert Mims is a decent back, 269. The production obviously not great there at the 2.9 yards per carry, but 8 scores is good. Brad Rosner is a solid player, 208, 11.6, and 2 scores. Trent Penix, 179, 12.8, and 3 touchdowns for him. So there is some decent depth here. This team just hasn't really hit the heights on offense that we hoped they would. The 19 touchdowns to 11 interceptions kind of establishes that. But overall, this is an offense that's a solid middle-of-the-road ACC offense.
The offensive line, solid unit. I think Anthony Belton's a behemoth of a left tackle. Had a solid season. Dylan McMahon at center, solid season as well. I think, an average O-line at best. That's pretty evident with their abilities to run the ball, which isn't very high. Looking at Kansas State, this is the unit that put up 38 points per game this year, 446 in terms of yards. It's going to be a little different, though. Will Howard in the portal looks like he's going to be a Trojan. Treshaun Ward, he's heading back to the ACC with Boston College. That leaves, DJ Giddens to probably get a bigger bulk of the load here, even though he already adds, 16 attempts per game, 1,075 yards on the ground, and 9 scores. This is a guy, former, Mr. Kansas football player in high school. He was an elite specimen, backed up Deuce Vaughn last year, and he's really kind of, replaced him in that role. Did put up 286 receiving. Certainly not the same player in terms of explosiveness, but for being 6'1", 212, this is a phenomenal running back. And they're going to give the keys to Avery Johnson, a former higher-end recruit out of Wichita for them. And they have plenty of confidence in this. I think they've been certainly waiting to give him the keys here. The only thing he's really done this year is, 35 passing attempts, and 225 and 6 scores rushing. So they've used him a good bit here. I think they're pretty confident in his ability to come into this game and certainly keep this offense moving. Maybe not to the tune of 40 points, Nick, but I certainly think that they have competence at the quarterback position.
Will Howard transfers out and finds greener pastures for him on the West Coast. A very talented player that this team loses, 37.8 points per game, 4.86 yards per attempt on the ground, and 6.03 yards per play. Overall, an offense that was efficient across the board. Giddens is a great back, like I said, a former Mr. Kansas High School Player of the Year, a really talented homegrown guy. It's a school like Kansas State. It's great to keep the type of talent in your own state with other schools in the area like Oklahoma, Nebraska to the north, Texas, or a little further to the south, Missouri across the river. So it's good to keep your talent like that in the state. 1,000 yards on the ground, for him, 9 touchdowns, 5.5 yards per carry. Good numbers certainly there. Johnson, he also has 6 rushing touchdowns this season in addition to the 3 passing touchdowns. So he can certainly use and be involved on his legs. They've had him involved in a bit of a Wildcat setup at times as well. So I think this offense will be just fine in this bowl game. I think they have a good way to kind of substitute and plug players in and get the job done.
Yeah, you look at the receiving core, they're certainly going to be down some weapons. Ben Sinnott at tight end, Phillip Brooks, top 2 pass catchers have declared for the draft. I know Sinnott is certainly not playing in this game. Brooks, he might be. Haven't got an official word on that. But regardless, they're going to be down some big players. Giddens will be their second leading pass catcher if they end up losing those top 2 guys. And then J.C. Brown, a freshman, would be the lead one. Jaden Jackson, Keegan Johnson, guys that are certainly capable. I think R.J. Garcia is in the portal, so they're going to be very limited at this pass catching position for Avery Johnson to work with. It appears, Nick. What do you think this offense is going to do? Obviously they're going to still run the ball. 200 yards per game is what they do. They're facing a good run defense, though. A young quarterback with some, different weapons. This could be a complete disaster for Kansas State, or it could really work out.
This could certainly work out for this team, and I think they have the potential to do so. If Brooks plays, that's a big add. If Brooks isn't playing, and obviously Sanat is not playing, that's 2 losses there, but I think they do have enough back power and Giddens to run on this team. I think Avery Johnson adds a new dynamic with his legs and a true, dual threat quarterback opportunity there. They have some other guys like Jace Brown. Giddens is solid out of the backfield. Jaden Jackson is a good receiver. So I think this offense can still have success. I don't think they're going to score 38 points in this game, but I think they will be able to score, 20, 25, something like that, and be able to put a closer mark, and if their defense can keep them in this one.
The offensive line as well, one of the better units in the country. At left tackle, KT Leviston finally showcasing some nice progression to really shore up this part of the O-line. Cooper Beebe at left guard, elite player. He's playing in this bowl game. Some of his other teammates, like we said, aren't. I think it's kind of disappointing that this guy, who's the best player on the team, he's going to play here, but some of the top pass catchers aren't. I guess, I get it. Everyone has a personal business decision to make here, Nick. Cooper's making one to play for his teammates one last time.
I think this makes a great decision for him. He's a big physical player. He is a great team leader for this team. He moved into the interior this past season. He's a big physical guy. Great leader for this team. I respect it. If a player is willing to come back when they have such a high draft stock and play in a bowl game, I got to give a round of applause because that's awesome to see from a player like that.
Looking at the defensive side of the ball, NC State, this unit was pretty on par with what we thought they would do this season. 1 point worse per game allowed, from 19 to 20.2 points per game allowed this season. But they were still dominating, especially against the run, 104 yards per game, only 11 scores allowed. Yet to allow a 200-yard rushing game this season. They're going against a team that, again, rushes for exactly 200 this year. Notre Dame back in week 2, they had one long run after like a 3-hour weather delay, and that was it. They pretty much shut them down, so that number is highly inflated. They kept Wake Forest only 7, Virginia Tech, UNC. But over this 5-game winning streak, they've been really good against the run. The yards per carry number is certainly, higher over the last 2, 6.2, and then 7.7 over the last 2 games and, contests they were able to win as their offense was able to really put it together. CJ Clark in the portal, though, for NC State. He's on his way out. It's not great. Elite linebacker Peyton Wilson. Looks like he's going to opt out of this one. They still have some good players, though. Red Hibbler, Davin Van on the defensive line, Savion Jackson, Jalen Scott, Cade Fordham, a young linebacker who really stepped up, Devon Beatty. Someone's going to have to replace the production here. It's likely going to be Scott, who's going to be the signal caller, as Wilson's production is certainly going to be missed. And this is a defense we've loved over the last couple of years under Dave Dornick. Certainly wasn't able to power them to anything major in the conference. But this winning streak here over the last part of the season, great momentum, and it's mainly because of what this defense has been able to do.
Losing a guy like Wilson is obviously a big loss for this front part of this defense, but they still have some other players that can step up and get the job done. Jalen Scott, I like him as your new signal caller, good leader, 72 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Good production there. I think you really get what you want out of that. I think there's other solid pieces here. Savion Jackson is a good leader for this defense as well. 36 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Good numbers there. I like what I've seen so far this season out of him. There's some other solid players. Brandon Cleveland is a good young player, 23 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks for him. Good numbers. So this is a unit that has some solid pieces they can plug in and get the job done. They've been really solid against the run. That's a very promising thing if you're a Wolfpack fan.
They've only given up two games of 400-plus yards this year, back in week 2 against Notre Dame, where they did get throttled in the secondary, and then Louisville. Both teams had exactly 286 passing. Marshall, that is, who had 300-plus passing. Well, they were on the field for 90 plays, though. I mean, that's 4.6 yards per play. That's some very good numbers for a defense who certainly gas. This pass defense, though, certainly has been less than perfect. The 18 touchdowns isn't great, but the 17 picks is phenomenal. 57% opponent completion rating. Those are great numbers to look for. A lot of playmakers here. Of course, Wilson was tied for the team lead in picks. Devon Boykin, though, at safety has 3 of his own. Aiden White, top player at corner. Shaheem Battle. I mean, this is a defense I absolutely raved about a couple months back. I love what they've been able to accomplish this season, especially with some of these talented players in the secondary. Especially if we're going to face some younger receivers here. Kansas State might have the benefit of not having as much film for NC State to look at, but these are veteran playmakers, Nick, against a young quarterback. 17 interceptions this year. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for them to really flip field with their ball hawking.
17 picks is certainly an impressive number for this team. There are some good leaders on this defense. Devon Boykin, 54 total tackles, 3 picks, 1 pass breakup. Sean Brown, 59 total tackles, 2 picks, 3 pass breakups. Shaheem Battle, 39 total tackles, 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. Aiden White, 32 total tackles, 2 interceptions, 9 pass breakups. So I think the production is certainly positive from this defense. I think it's a really good thing to look forward for this team.
And then the Kansas State defense unit, they're right there on par with them, 21.2 points per game, which is a really crushing unit to not step back one bit. Austin Moore, great linebacker for them. Desmond Purnell, these two really had to step up. They're going to be about 2 of their top players, though, in the secondary, Kobe Savage, and then Will Lee, who's their highest graded player. They're going to have to lean on these guys like Moore Caladuke, Nate Matlock, to get into the backfield. Brendan Mott as well, a veteran. And, they do a pretty sound job in their own right against the run. They're not as elite, 140 yards per game allowed. Certainly have struggled over the last month, though. They gave up 230 rushing in 3 of the last 4 games. One was against Texas, granted. The other 2, Kansas, they have a solid running game. And then Iowa State, who had over 11 yards per carry, Nick, 258 on 23 tries. I mean, that is just absurdly disappointing. They're certainly much stouter in the middle of the year against guys like Ollie Gordon, UCF, even held Missouri in check. But it seems like they kind of gave up here over the last half of the year, not playing the most dynamic of opponents. And then NC State, they don't have the greatest rushing attack either, but any team that has that QB run threat, Kansas, for example, can really throttle you.
Certainly, if you have that QB run threat, it can be something very tough for this defense to keep up with. Kyler Duke's a great player, 17 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 6 sacks for him. I think the production is solid for him. Austin Moore at linebacker, good leader for this team, 59 total tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Good production there. I think he's a solid piece. Austin Romaine, a true freshman who had a solid season, 20 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a sack, getting thrusted into the spotlight there at middle linebacker. So there is some nice production overall on this defense. This defensive unit, 21.2 points per game, is a lot better than I thought they would be, and I'm very pleased with that.
In the secondary, they've been good this year themselves, 57% opponent comp rate, 230 yards per game allowed. They were able to snag 12 picks. Jacob Parrish at his corner spot, 3 picks leading the way. He's been really good. Another safety, Marquise Sagal, who's the leading tackler. VJ Payne, Keenan Garber. I mean, these guys are going to have to step up in this game without their top 2 players, going to be present for this contest. I don't expect them to really be awful by any means. I certainly think there's going to be times where you can exploit them, maybe in a communication issue, or maybe just on one-on-one coverage, though. But I think Siegel's going to have a good game. He's had a great year overall. We'll see what some of these other guys can do. The notepad's certainly going to be out on this, though.
I think certainly I agree with you there. I think this is a secondary that has some solid pieces, but an opportunity for this team to take care of it. Marquise Sledge, like you said, 60 total tackles, 7 pass breakups, 1 pick, good numbers. They lost some other talented players in the secondary, and Kobe Savage and Will Lee, so that's going to be a problem for this unit. Some guys are going to have to step up. VJ Payne's going to have to step up, 47 total tackles, 3 pass breakups, and a pick. Keon Garber, 4 pass breakups, and a pick for him as well. I think the guys can step up and get the job done, but this secondary does have some holes in it due to some opt-outs.
To the final thoughts and the prediction. Speaking of having the notepad out, it's going to be when Avery Johnson's on the field. Really want to see what the future is made of for Kansas State. For NC State, you want to pressure that young quarterback and limit that running game. Use Armstrong's abilities, that being his strong arm and ability to run the football. Force him into mistakes for KSU. He's been prone to do so. Put the pack in the long third downs. I think this is going to be a defensive affair. I think NC State, there's no way they lose this game. Don't really understand why they're underdogs. Maybe we're missing something in the media on who's not playing. But I know for Kansas State, they're missing some big-time players, a lot of production on offense, a couple of crucial players in the back end for them on defense. And I don't think NC State's exactly going to be able to take advantage of that often, maybe once or twice on a drive. But are they going to be able to finish those drives and hit the end zone? Not exactly convinced. So I think they'll win this game, no doubt. But I think that's kind of crazy for me to say that. I think Johnson's going to be a stud, even though he's working with some limited players here. Still has a great O-line in front of him, led by BB Nick. This is going to be a great game regardless. Should be a one-score contest through 60 minutes.
I'm going to take Kansas State here. I do believe Johnson has just enough on this offense, and there is not enough film on him to really have a full category to practice with. I think this is going to catch this NC State team off guard a little bit here. I like Kansas State to win this one. I think this will be a close contest down in Orlando. I'm excited for this game. I think it's a good matchup between two teams that are under the right directions with their head coaches. I think both teams are in solid spots at this point. I like Kansas State to win this one, though. I think they have a good opportunity here to cover the spread as well. Their offense, I think, is just going to be a little more dynamic in this game and has that kind of extra element that we don't really expect, and I think NC State's going to struggle with that.
Not a bad game on tap right before New Year's, December 28th, Thursday evening. Make sure you tune in for the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Should be a good one. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.